And we're live.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our work session this evening. Starting off with our reports, my president's report. I'd like to report that on August 13th, we have our Board of Education Business meeting, which will be held in the lower lobby of the auditorium where we're at right now. On August 24th, we have our first day of school. And then on September 3rd, we have our next work session, which again will be held in the lower lobby where we are to safely distance. Then on September 7th, we have our Labor Day, so there will be no school. And September 10th, we will have our next business meeting. And that is all I have to report. Does anybody else have any other dates that I have not mentioned? All right, so we'll get our work session started. Sorry, I didn't hold my mask out. We'll do our technology update. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Fred Hartman to come to the front.
This is terrible. It's echoing so bad I can't understand. Maybe if you talk slower.
Thank you.
So board members, Fred is set up. This was a late addition. We want to give board members an update on the status of our technology deliveries. And so Fred and I have been talking on this over the course of the last week and have worked to keep you up to speed on the shipment of devices that we've been expecting to arrive and some announcements that we think we need to make tomorrow afternoon.
Just let you observe the vision and the mission of the district, and I'll get right into my update.
So Fred, you're going to have to speak up a little bit.
I'll get right into my update. And this year, perhaps not surprisingly, with our growing dependence on technology for the school year, we are crossing our fingers that our shipments will arrive on time. And while we placed orders at a normal time, these are not normal times, and we, like so many other districts, are waiting patiently for shipments that have been delayed. I mentioned to you, I think, in a past meeting, that with virtual school, we can anticipate a greater demand on our internet pipe. And to that end, we have ordered and received, and we will be installing this week, tomorrow, a switch that will allow us to develop or expand our pipe to accommodate what we anticipate to be a higher demand with teachers in the district teaching out to students in the cloud. We're at 1 gig now, and once we install this switch and AT&T increases on their end, then we will be able to scale up our pipe, double it in size and more if necessary. Another key component to our delivery of content to students this year will be 2,000 Chromebooks that we ordered in May. The last time we ordered 2,000 Chromebooks for the high school was in 2016. We ordered those in March of that year and received them in April. So we put in an order in May 15th for these 2,000 Chromebooks, and unfortunately, we don't have them yet. Neither does CDWG, through whom we will get them. But they must get to CDWG, where they will be configured and processed over the course of about 5 business days. I am told by CDWG that they are in transit. What this means probably is that best case scenario is they come in 2 weeks. We also purchased in June 526 Samsung tablets. We got those tablets right away, and we expect to get the cases for them on Monday. So my team continues to work on configuring the tablets so that we can deliver them to students and students can use them in a safe context. Work continues on that. They will be ready at the end of the month. We also submitted an order for 787 additional Chromebooks, and this order was placed in June, and we might look for those in September, best case scenario. They are delayed. 400 of those will come in first, and 387 are delayed beyond that. It's a tough supply chain out there. We also have in the last week ordered 450 replacement chargers. My team this summer has gone through every building looking for technology Chromebooks to deliver to students for our one-to-one support district-wide. And what we've discovered is that we were missing a lot of chargers, so we placed orders for those, and we're hopeful they will come in the next week. So, as I mentioned, the tablets for K1 will be ready next week. We have the recycled Chromebooks from 2016 RHS, and my team this summer has worked on re-imaging those and making them available for the other schools, middle and elementary. There are 1,050 of those that we will distribute evenly to the middle schools and to the elementary schools to boost our numbers up so that we can provide a device for every student. The Chromebooks, all of these Chromebooks will be in locations agreed upon by the principals within the next week, all that we have, so that they can begin planning for and even begin their distribution. However, key to their distribution will be the 2,000 Chromebooks that we are counting on at the high school. Once we receive those at the high school, as you know, we don't have 2,000 students enrolled. We have, I think, around 1,700 or so this year. So we will have a surplus, and we will take those extra Chromebooks and we will make them available to the middle schools and the elementary schools, along with a pool of Chromebooks we have in the high school. They are loaners at our help desk. And that number will total somewhere around 400. And that might get us over the hurdle in terms of number of devices required to provide one for every student. Later, when those 787 come in, later in September or later still, we will use those to supplement where we need and then to serve as our spares at the help desk, because we anticipate during the year that there will be a need for replacement devices and new devices for newly enrolling students. So that is the situation right now. It's unfortunate that we're so backed up, that the orders did not get here on time, but these are difficult times for our vendors to provide us with what we ordered. I'll take questions if there are any.
Yeah, I have one, Fred. This is Ruth. Can you hear me? Hear me? Fred, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can hear me? How much do the chargers cost?
The chargers are about $16 a piece.
And when we give the Chromebooks out to the high school, did they have to pay a deposit?
We are talking about, are you talking about this year with the one-to-one?
Well, I'm talking about in the past.
So in the past, we did have an insurance plan in place, and many students did buy the insurance. It was $20, and it made the first repair completely free, no matter what it was. The second repair was a maximum of $25. And the insurance, $20 insurance also gave the student a maximum $50 fine for a totally destroyed or lost Chromebook. We had many families over the course of the one-to-one buy into that insurance plan, and we used that money to buy spare parts, to repair our Chromebooks. And we still have some money from that plan. And again, this year with the one-to-one at the high school, and in fact, district-wide with the distribution of technology to students, we are, Chris, is this decided? We've been discussing the idea of having that plan available to all students at all grade levels.
So the insurance is $20 a device, and as Fred had said, it prevents the cost. The cost of a Chromebook is around $260. Allows us to build up a bank of parts, and also should there be a situation where families lose a device or a device is completely destroyed, we're not completely out of device. So the expectation and the communication to the community is that coverage for insurance would be $20 per device.
So it doesn't cover when they don't bring the charger and turn it in.
Does not cover the charger. It covers the damage to the device itself. Also covers the replacement.
Okay, and do we not then charge them for not bringing the charger?
I don't. I'll have to check with high school to get the answer about the charger.
Seems like they should have, when they turn it in, they should have to turn in the whole thing. I know at my work, when I turned my equipment in, I was responsible for all of the equipment, not just the laptop itself, but anything else that I had, speakers, chargers, whatever. So I'm just wondering if at $16, that's not that much, for an individual, but when you add up that we have to buy, however many you said we had to buy, it comes up to a pretty good sum.
Right.
My question.
I agree.
So there's some messaging connected to this, board members. Fred, if you can go to the next slide.
So 2,000 devices is the critical piece of this puzzle. If we get the 2,000 devices in time to get them processed through CDW and get them distributed, then we think that we can be in a place to be in a good place on the 24th. We would also want to message to the community tomorrow with your support that families that have devices already for distance learning, if families that have the capacity, that have the ability to do that, if they'd be willing to start with their own device, that would allow us to shift and focus on the students and families that need the device from us first, with the goal of ensuring that every student has a device to engage in virtual learning. So that's a message that we would like to share with the community tomorrow afternoon in the business with your support. That families, if you have your own device that's effective, would you please start the year using that and allow us to redirect the devices that we do have to the families that are most in need, so that every home, every resident has minimum one device that can be used for virtual learning. If that's not a possibility, Fred, next slide, please.
So, hey, Fred, how many devices are we still trying to collect?
So we've collected 1,050 devices, Fred, from the high school at this point.
Okay, so how many have we not collected yet?
What's the date on that, Fred?
1,050 as of a few days ago. There's some expectation that more might be turned in.
Okay, so as of like right now, how many are we without total that we gave out that we have not gotten back?
Well, if you mean gave out last school year,
Yes.
in the 1920 school year at the high school, we gave out a Chromebook to every enrolled student.
Okay, so then how many total middle school, high school from last year to right now have we not gotten back?
Several hundred.
So just
The
200.
high school, in the conversation with the high school, Brad, the
high school has the belief that a number of students have not brought their device back.
the students would bring their device back to exchange it for their newest device to get their new Chromebook. We've also we gave out 250 Chromebooks to the two middle schools back in April. And of those 250 at each middle school, we're still waiting for 100 of those devices at each middle school to come back. There have been some pickup and collection days also at the high school, and there have been some pickup and collections at the middle schools. The belief at the high school as well as the middle is the students are going to wait to bring the device back with them for the start of school. But we can't be certain on the numbers at this point.
I have a question. Fred, is 1,050 that you talked about, does that include those that were ruined that, could not be used again, that had to be salvaged?
No, that's 1,050 that are usable and that we have actually in this building ready to be distributed to middle schools and elementary schools to give to students this year.
So how many were ruined, that couldn't be used?
That count is probably around 200 or so.
Okay. So you can account for 1,250 of however many were given out last year. Is that correct?
Roughly correct, yes, roughly.
Okay, thank you.
So we think that there's 400 or so still left out there from the high school and 100 from each.
Over the 4 years of the one-to-one program annually, some have gone uncollected every year. And so it has accumulated and today it might represent a few hundred. I can't be certain until the students who are currently enrolled and who have Chromebooks that did not turn them in, bring them back, ideally, at the beginning of this school year. And if that number is sizable, then of course that reduces the total loss from the one-to-one program from 2016.
So do they? Is it possible that they don't?
We could find out. We could, yes, we could find out who they are. Well, we do know who they are. Yes, we do know who they are.
Is it possible that the underclassmen don't think they have to turn them in, and that they'll just bring them when they start school?
They will be told that before they get a new Chromebook, they will be told that they need to turn in their old Chromebook.
Right. Okay.
And we could work with the high school to make sure that every student who was enrolled last year and who received a Chromebook has turned in their Chromebook, and we would not give them a new one until we got their old one back if there was doubt whether they turned one in.
Okay, sounds good.
When's the last time that we've gone to the community and asked if you have a Chromebook, we need you to turn it in?
That is something that I believe the high school has done a little bit of footwork in that area. I believe this summer, for example, some of the administrators went around on the buses and collected Chromebooks that way.
I can get you the exact date of the last time it happened. So there were a couple of options that the high school did this summer. They also went to both schools thinking that it might be easier for student families if they live on one side of the district or the other to get to a middle school to turn the device back in. I can get you the date of when the high school had last done that.
I had a family ask, and I said, oh, the Admin building comes with Chromebooks, so I don't know if they ever did or if they didn't. So I just wonder how many other people are out there with them, like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing with this.
I mean, as a parent of high schoolers, I can tell you that we got notifications, emails, texts from the high school, certain dates to drop them off. Now, if you didn't drop them off on those dates, I guess that maybe when they went around in the community to, on the bus stops and stuff, but I received notifications.
Can we
So
get a
the-
written can we get a written report on how many we've lost and how many are broke, and can we get a detailed report on the status of all these?
So, yeah, I'll work with Dr. Harlan as well as the high school team to get that to the board.
Seems like we got a lot of money we're throwing down a hole.
But ultimately, I think the piece here is whether we don't know where they are or not, we might be short getting people their Chromebooks.
So this slide, potential impact board members, is that should the shipment of 2,000 Chromebooks not arrive prior to the start of school, we face the potential of needing to consider pushing back the start date of school from the 24th to the 31st of August. We're struggling to be certain of the number of families that would take us up on the bring your own device or start the year with your own device. And with the 2,000 Chromebooks, if we don't have those prior to the start of school, very concerned that we would not be in a situation where students would have a device to start the year 100% virtually. As Fred had said, usually a shipment will take 3 weeks to take 3 months, which was something that wasn't anticipated as the pandemic has gotten worse. The need for technology has gotten worse. And as CARES Act money has been going into districts, more and more districts are buying more and more devices. So the supply chain is really getting choked up. So the concern is if we don't get the shipment of 2,000 in, even though we do know that we have several hundred Chromebooks that Dr. Thompson pointed out that are not yet in return, that with notwithstanding, we don't have that shipment. It's very difficult for us to start on time on the 24th. The date that we believe we would need to make a decision would be next Friday, August 14th. If that shipment is not at minimum at CDW in Chicago, which is our government supplier, if the shipment is not at minimum in Chicago, there is very little likelihood that they would arrive in time for them to get imaged, turned around into the hands of children before the 24th of August. So in that communication, that with your support, we'd like to share with the community tomorrow. We would like to also make the community aware of this potential that we may need to push the start of the school year back to the 31st of August. That would take board action because that would be modifying the calendar as it exists because our calendar has been approved by DESI. And so that would take action next week at the business if we were going to go that route. So students would have the potential to pay the $20 for the insurance, and then a new device would be issued to them.
I couldn't hear the question. What was the question?
So the consideration of the 31st start is what I spoke on. The team that we have at work in the summer, we have a team of 10 tech interns that are recent Ritenour graduates along with Ritenour students that are in college. Dr. Harlan has kept that team at work and on deck for 2 weeks additional. So the team will be in the district for an extended period of time. We also have a plan to utilize office professionals, librarians, other work groups in the district. As soon as that shipment of devices gets here in the district, there would be an ability to turn them around very quickly to get them to kids. But if we don't have those devices by the end of next week, it would be impossible to have for the 24th of August.
So we're saying that we might not be able to start school on the 24th. We got to go to the 31st.
Correct.
You know, that's just not acceptable. We got parents already scrambling to get things in place. And now we're going to give them a moving target for the first day of school.
Do we have any idea how many families this would involve?
Ruth, were you saying something?
Do we have any idea how many families this would involve? You know, because maybe a high school kid gets a Chromebook and maybe he has 2 or 3 siblings. And so they would be able to maybe share it. And so they wouldn't not necessarily have to have 4 Chromebooks in their house.
Yeah, so that would be the work. It would start with the message, putting the message out to the community tomorrow, and then working to get an understanding of just what that would look like. We could have that data by the meeting next week.
I mean, that should already really be available once someone tells us. I mean, once you issue them, you should be able to tell if they have siblings in the house that, you know, in the same family that can use the one that you're issuing to, let's say, the high school student or the middle school student, or maybe one elementary and there's 3 elementary kids.
Right.
Maybe we don't have to shift the date.
Right.
Well, the concern there would be that they're all doing class at the same time. So they wouldn't still have a device to do the class.
I couldn't hear you, Jennifer.
They would be doing the class at the same time. So if I have a second grader, a fourth grader, and a sixth grader, they're all going to be in their own class at the same time. So they wouldn't still be able to be on the same device at the same time.
Right, I understand, but it's my understanding that this virtual isn't like a regular school day where there are teachers up in front talking the whole time to the class. There's breaks in between and, you know.
Yeah, so the schedule for the day would be released tomorrow as well. It's pretty consistent to what a regular school day would look like. We moved away from full-time asynchronous learning like we had back in the spring to have more of a structure to the day. There are breaks that are built in throughout the day. And it's a combination of live synchronous instruction with asynchronous time built in content areas.
So will there be certain accommodations made for students that, like dual enrollment students, or I know some seniors that haven't started on their college apps, just students that can't really participate kind of in the pushback? I know that school starts on the 24th for Flow Valley. I'm not sure about North Tech and stuff like that.
So if students are in a separate program, like a Flow Valley program, then the students are spending the majority of time there. The students would be starting on time in the separate program. But these would be the Ritenour School District in-house programs that we may have to push back to the 31st.
Right. I just mean like for those kids who like need Chromebooks to be in those classes, would they kind of be prioritized? For me personally, like a means of doing my work, but I just worry about, I know some other full-time students that don't have Chromebooks.
Yeah, so the thinking, Kayla, was at first, you know, based on the families that indicate they do have devices, we would start there. In terms of a prioritizing beyond, how would we prioritize the first handout? We haven't gotten that far yet. We're trying to identify families if you have the tools, and if you're willing to support us to use that start. That's as far as we've gotten at this point.
The other suggestion I would have is make sure that if they do say they have devices at home, make sure that they are able to get to what they need to get to. So like, I know that we have a computer at home that doesn't get to Zoom. So if that's how they're having their class, and they can't get to Zoom, we need to make sure that they don't say I have a device, but they really can't use it.
Yeah, you're right.
So the messaging that's going out tomorrow, is it just asking about the devices that they have, or is it also messaging that we will be put in with
So the messaging would indicate that there's a potential that the start date may have to move back. I don't want to get ahead of the board because I don't want to be presumptuous that the board would approve a change in the calendar, but I do also want to get the information out to the community that it's a possibility.
So if the messaging that's going out tomorrow is about a potential date, when are we asking about the device?
So in the same message. So it would be the message of can you use your own device to start the year. In the message, it's also that technology staff ordered 3,000 Chromebooks to assist the district provide electronic learning. Fortunately, due to high demand from school districts across the nation and shipping delays, the devices are not scheduled to arrive until later this month. This delay is extremely challenging for our team. You know, it's very disappointing news for our families. So it would be the information tomorrow would be a possibility of a 1 week late start. But also, we are asking our families who have a suitable computer or device to use it until our shipment arrives. If 20% of our families use their own device, we'll have enough technology to distribute to start the year virtually. Once our shipment comes in, we'll quickly distribute these new devices to our families. We'll also provide Wi-Fi hotspots as needed for families. So it would be the combination of both.
And so are people supposed to let us know how? Send us email or survey, how are we getting that information back?
So more information about the device rollout, including training sessions, will be announced soon. I don't have the exact answer for that yet. It's something that we're going to have to build out.
I have it right, or I do not have it.
Right. Right. Likely it would be a Google Doc. It's not created here.
I think that needs to be part of the, if we don't put it out there right then and there, people are not going to come back. Do we also include the device outstanding bill?
I can't hardly hear people when they're talking. I don't know if they're not close enough to their machine or what, but I can barely hear anybody except Chris.
So I said that we need to. I said we need to make sure that we're asking. Like Lisa was saying that we need to tell people how they would inform us if they have a device at home, and that needs to be a part of the communication tomorrow. And then. We need to ask them if they have a device and if they can provide that. Like, let us know. Oh, and if they have a device that they have yet to turn in, they need to contact their school principal or somebody to get it turned back.
I would hope that maybe or something that we have for the agreement to hold out, but they have any kind of device. Or if they have a flip phone, they're not going to be able to access it. So the people that you're really, truly looking for that are going to really need help, you need to be able to access it too.
Other questions, board members? So no definite action on a start date. I'll stay in contact with you regularly, trending with the meeting next Thursday. Look forward to also being able to share with you on a quick turnaround the numbers of the families and the numbers of devices that are being reported. I feel very confident that because of the quick turnaround and survey results that we've been getting as we've been doing lately, I feel pretty confident that we're pretty good sample in a very short period of time. We've been holding off on this, hoping because the messaging that we're getting from our technology providers that they're on the way. We felt very good about the Chromebooks. In fact, it's really just come on the radar recently. There's the possibility they might not arrive by the first day. So it's really ramped up the urgency and the intensity around it. Because again, the 787, if they don't arrive, we think we're going to be fine to start the school year with the devices that we have. with those 2,000 if they don't arrive, it's going to be a problem.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Moving on to our 2.03, we have our St. Anne's SRO agreement. And I'll turn it over to Dr.
So board members, we've got members of the St. Anne Police Department here with us, a number of members of the St. Anne Police Department. Appreciate everybody being here with us tonight. So going back a couple of months, talked about our SRO agreements that we maintain. We maintain SRO agreements with the City of St. Anne, Breckenridge Hills, as well as the City of St. John. And as we're working through improvement plans in the district with our partners, we are on the topic of SRO agreements, and we're starting with the City of St. Anne. So Michael Smith, in his role of Director of Operations, he's the liaison with the police departments and the SRO programs. So Mike is going to start us off, and I'm going to speak on the draft agreement that we had a conversation with the command staff of the St. Anne Police Department. When I get to that part, I'm going to ask each member of the St. Anne delegation that's here to stand and introduce themselves so we can give you a welcome. Mike is going to start us off. We'll introduce the St. Anne delegation. I'll speak to each of the items in the draft agreement. There was special focus on the topic of prone restraint. Elliot Miller, one of our SROs from the high school, is going to speak on just what is that prone restraint. Because in the draft agreement that we received from Robert Husted, there was one of the items is to outlaw or ban any type of prone restraint. So we just want to have a conversation tonight as to what that is and the department's perspective on that. Mike?
Good evening. So our partnerships with local police departments help us to reach our mission and vision, and we deeply value and rely on those relationships with law enforcement. So as part of the Planning for Action plan, we're reviewing the SRO agreements with each department, as Dr. Kilbride said, and we have 3 police departments that we have SROs in the building from, and that includes St. Anne, Breckenridge Hills, and St. John. At Hake, we have Officer QT, and at Ritenour High School, as far as St. Anne, the St. Anne SROs, we have Elliot Miller, Jeremy Miller, and we had Officer Lou, but he recently resigned and took another position with another police department, and he's going to be replaced by Terrence Williams at the high school, and so I'm going to have the opportunity to meet him this coming Monday.
So, board members, actions to this point, I think you're aware of these actions. So I had an in-person meeting in my office with Chief Jimenez to discuss the desire to update and modify the agreement. The agreement that was on file was from 2014. So we're at the point now where it needs to be updated and modified. I had a phone conference with the St. Anne command staff about a week and a half ago, and a number of members of the command staff are here in the room with us tonight. And then a review of the agreement with board leadership in one of our president meetings, reviewed the document with Jennifer and Stacy, and it's been pushed out, I believe, in a Friday memo to the board. So before we get to the draft items in the document, I would like to take a minute and starting with Captain Barry. Just ask everybody from the St. Anne delegation to just stand up and introduce themselves. Thank you, Captain Barry. Captain,
And he apologizes for not giving you.
Thank you all for being here. Much appreciated. So the items in the agreement that Pat discussed briefly with the command staff are laid out in the next series of slides. I'll just speak on each of these. The first item, we currently pay and we continue to pay the salary for each of 2 school resource officers from the St. Anne Police Department at the cost of $46,000 annually. One of the SROs, in addition, will provide security at the Welcome Center here at the high school. It's 8 hours a day at a rate of $25 an hour, minus 45 minutes for lunch. So here at the high school, there's always an officer at the Welcome Center. The additional benefits and costs, if you could jump back to it, Mike, sorry. The additional benefits and costs, equipment, retirement, and so on, is not covered by us, it's covered by the city of St. Anne. And St. Anne actually provides us 4 officers, 3 at Ritenour High School, 2 that function in the school resource officer capacity, and then another school resource officer that spends the majority of the time at the Welcome Center in the front of the building. There's also 1 officer, Officer QT, that's at Hague Middle School. So we have meetings of first responders throughout the course of the year. That includes St. Anne. It also includes all of our municipalities, not just police departments, but fire, EMTs. We want to establish a once-a-semester meeting specific with St. Anne. We want to use this agreement to be the model for our SRO agreements with the other departments, with Breckenridge and St. John. But we would organize a meeting once per semester with the St. Anne command staff, along with Michael Smith, Julie Hahn, and myself, to discuss strengths and opportunities in the partnership. Just to make sure we're having an ongoing open dialogue, and it's not a situation that we're coming together to talk about issues when issues arise. As a part of the agreement, the high school would have 3 officers in the building at all times during the school day, and there would also be 1 officer available above and beyond for evening events and activities and so on. As a part of the agreement, we would take the responsibility, Ritenour would, organizing and providing anti-bias training. This is something that is planned for Ritenour School District administrators, and we would make that training available. It would be required for our school resource officers, the 4, 3 in the high school, and 1 officer QT at Hague. But in addition, the training would be extended to the entire police department at no cost to the department. And this training would be designed in coordination with Mr. Phillips. This training would be delivered by Tabari Coleman. Tabari with the Anti-Defamation League has experience in providing anti-bias training for police departments. He's worked with St. Louis County. He's also worked with St. Louis City. And our hope is that we can partner, our expectation is we would partner Tabari with Mr. Phillips to organize this training that would be provided to district administrators and officers in the entire St. Anne Police Department. So as a part of this process, as a district, we will be, we've not done it yet, but we would be revising our restraint policy to ensure that we're in line with best practices. Currently, our restraint policy, restraint is covered under policy JGA. And the language specific to restraint is the use of person-to-person physical contact to restrict the free movement of all or part of a student's body. It does not include briefly holding a student without undue force for instructional or other purposes, briefly calming a student, taking a student's hand, transporting her for safety, physical escort, or intervening in a fight. That is the language in our policy around restraint. We plan on reviewing the policy, getting professional opinions, and revising that policy as in JGA, the policy language goes on to staff members are permitted to use the amount of restraint necessary to reasonably prevent a student from injuring himself, prevent other students from injury, to protect teachers' well-being, and to prevent destruction of school or personal property.
That's our current restraint policy that needs to be reviewed, from my perspective, revised. In this SRO document, you can see that we will be revising and reviewing our restraint policy in line with practice. It goes further to state that the use of individual defined as a physical maneuver that restricts an individual's ability to breathe for the purposes of incapacitation or any prone restraint is prohibited. There's no question or debate around the issue of chokehold. There was some conversation around what is this prone restraint? What is that? So that's part of what Officer Miller is going to speak to us on here in just a minute. The last item in the draft document is number 10. In the event of full-time virtual instruction, which is what we're going to be starting off the year in, our school resource officers would transition to assist with wellness checks in the community and in the region. And these wellness checks would be in collaboration with the social emotional behavioral team that consists of counselors, social workers, and support staff. So in a nutshell, when we're fully virtual, we have to have the capacity to go out and check on students and families, because the idea that we'd be able to reach out to them through email if they're not engaging virtually, it wouldn't happen, nor should it be appropriate to rely on phone calls. Every one of our buildings will have a wellness team that'll work closely with the administration to get out, make home visits in the community. And as a part of the agreement, we'd be shifting the work of our school resource officers to be a part of that wellness team. Before we get to the topic of prone restraint, board members, if there's any question of anything I've said thus far in the agreement, any questions you have before we get to Officer Miller?
What's the SEB? Chris?
Hi, Ruth.
What's SEB?
SEB, Social Emotional Behavioral Team.
Oh, yeah, okay. And when the officers go out, are we sure they're going to be well accepted? I'm worried about that.
That was a part of the conversation that I've had. When the officers go out, the officers would not be in their regulation uniform. We'd be getting spirit wear to the officers. The officers function as a member of the Ritenour staff when they're here. That's something that Chief Jimenez has been very clear on. The SROs function as a Ritenour staff member, so we'd want them to be going out as a Ritenour staff member with Ritenour spirit wear on.
Okay, that's good. I know when I was helping over on the committee with the early childhood, one of the ladies that was over there that was interpreter said that you know, some of the families are not comfortable around our police just because of the culture they come from. So I was concerned about that.
You know, I think that speaks to the role of a school resource officer, which is to build purposeful relationships, because the events over the course of the last 3 months and far beyond that, you know, highlight the fact that some people struggle around the relationship with police. And I want to credit the officers that we have that have been working in the district, specifically St. Anne officers, as I do see them working on a daily basis to build purposeful relationships and trust with students. I can think back to a couple of incidents last year where as a building, you have to know who are the adults that care about you, who are the adults that you can go to in a crisis. And for a number of our students at Ritenour High School, their first person has been a school resource officer, that before they would go to a teacher, before they would go to an administrator, they might first go to a school resource officer because that might be the person they have the best relationship with. But we always have to be mindful that it's very possible that people are going to have a perception about police, and you know, we have to be aware of that.
Right. She was talking mostly about the like the families who come from other cultures or, you know, other countries.
Other questions? So this topic of prone restraint, when I had the conversation with the command staff, there was some back and forth on the various items, but this was the one part of the conversation that Chief and I had the idea. It might make sense for just to make sure that we have a clear understanding of what this term prone restraint means. Okay.
So anyway, hey guys, I'm Elliot Miller. I'm an SRO, and I have been for quite a few years. And this will be year 7 at the high school, so, which is really cool. Really lucky St. Anne's and the chief values the partnership between the school districts and the police. And he's so pro Ritenour that the opportunity came along to put SROs here, and I was lucky he asked me. And I've always, by the way, I've never had the opportunity with my bosses and my school bosses, police bosses, school bosses, all in a room together, for me to express some appreciation for allowing me to come into the school every day and work for you.
Chris, I really can't hear anything. Is anything going on there?
Yeah, can't hear, can't see.
I can't, we
Yeah,
can't
same
see
here.
who's talking either. Is he in front of a computer or camera?
So thank you all for allowing me to be here. And I know Ruby's one of our SROs, and one of our new SROs, Terrence Williams, is here. He's taking Lou's place. So looking forward to working with Terrence. As far as restraint, we're talking use of force. Is what the police use of force in the school setting. When a call comes out on the walkie at school, a teacher needs help or an office professional, they call, maybe it's a highway student, maybe it's a parent, a visitor that came into the school. And the call went out for help. Ideally, an administrator would arrive and then call an SRO. Now, I jumped at those calls. Sometimes I should slow down a little bit and wait for the administrator to tell me you're needed. Because a lot of times I'm not needed. Police presence is not needed. And oftentimes I might show up and just stay in the background to make sure everything's safe and not have to involve myself, because it might just be a school man, which is fine, that's great. When a school employee, or if I see a blatant crime happening, I have to do my job. But as far as arrests go, which is where the use of force usually will come in, it's when an administrator calls me, we want to charge this person. Okay? Has there ever been a case where I received a phone call in my office here at the school by a parent that said, my child was the victim of a crime and I want something done about it? You're a police officer? Yeah, that does happen. Not often. But usually it's when someone with the school wants to press charges against someone for a crime, okay? At that point, what I'm going to do, and of course, as a police officer, you're trying to, you want to substantiate that there's enough problem causing making an arrest. And 99% of the time, whether it's on the street or in the school, your presence and your verbal commands are all the use of force that's needed. You know, office with me, they wish to press charges for police disturbance. You just threaten the secretary, or push the teacher, or you were fighting in the lunchroom. That's usually all the force that's needed. Now, well, how we're trained in the police academy and in our continuing education training as police officers. And a moment ago, you read school policy, and so much of that actually is similar. There's really simple techniques that we're trained to use. And if I could borrow Captain West for a moment, that's okay. When so we're talking use of force or criminal restraint, but this is the restraint that we're talking at Police Academy. And it starts with someone that's resistant. Students, parents, please come to my office. The school wishes to catch up. And again, 99% of the time, they're going to come with me. And it's no problem. If for some reason they're resisting, no, I'm not going, they're not going to handcuff me. Oftentimes, we don't even have to handcuff in the school setting because the student will cooperate. Or even a visitor will cooperate. You need to come with me. Handcuffs aren't necessary. And everything's fine. We go and do our paperwork and they're charged, whatever. So when they're not, I'm not coming with you. I'm still trying to fight another person. We call this the escort position. And I heard some of this was similar mentioned a moment ago. And it's as simple as this, okay? You're holding the bicep, his other hand, it's almost like I'm putting his hand in my pocket. And I would walk him to our office. The whole idea of this restraint now is to ensure his safety and mine and anybody else. Because if he tries to hit me, or he continues to resist, he goes to a transport wrist lock. So he's still refusing to cooperate. At this point, I go to a transport wrist lock. And he's still pulling away from me, refusing to comply. At this point, it's distractionary technique, which will be immediate by. Again, this is not the hurting way. This is in both abuse of force, and it's been backed up in court. At this point, it's distractionary strike, and it's straight arm takedown. Where you would, I'm thinking this is a marble floor. At this point, it's a straight arm takedown. I'm restraining him. I rotate his arm to his back. Now notice my leg is on his shoulder, not on his neck. There's no choke going on. We never use chokes. And he gets hit. These are the restraint techniques that we're taught.
Is there a demonstration going on that we should be able to see?
No. It's not always this easy.
Chris, Mike.
Especially with size. There's so many high schools. There's no other way to mention it. It can get ugly, and it doesn't always go that easy. But those are the three restraint techniques that we are quite trained to use. Nobody ever said you can show on a person. Now, he was wrong when I was training. No children calls. Because the school policy says children can never be used. Step 4, you gotta hand out a lethal force situation.
We have multiple policies. We are certified, which is an international program that monitors our policies, and we can't deviate from them. It's a big deal. So I brought the policy that contains the most important information. So if you go to page 6, number 7, talks about and then the most important one is 7.1.5 through 7.4. And it clearly states in here, and it goes on, there's another page, on page 15, chokeholds are prohibited unless the officer reasonably believes deadly force is necessary. God forbid it happens in one of our schools. But we talked about this at length today. If I come in with a gun and I'm shooting kids, Elliot made it very clear that might be a case where we need to use
Can't hear.
something stronger than what we just presented.
What's
Can't
going
understand what she's saying.
We don't want that to happen. It's not the norm. You know, I pray for it every night that our kids come home safely. But our policies cover that. So what we're suggesting is that prone situation be taken out of the verbiage. And I have a statement that we would like the statement to say that St. police officers in the position of school resource officers for the Ritenour School District will not engage in physical contact with students, staff, or visitors to the building unless requested to do so by a Ritenour school administrator or staff member in the position of substitute administrator. Or there is imminent threat of harm, including death, to students, staff, and visitors. At the point of St. Anna officer in the position of school resource officer for the Ritenour School District engages with the person as requested by a written administrator or a staff member sitting in the position of an administrator, the officer is bound by policy and which are a lot more controlling than what you have suggested. So I've given you the crux of it right there. And when these guys come into the building, whether they're here as SROs or whether they're responding to a call, nobody wants anybody hurt. You know, that's the last thing. We don't want anyone to not walk out of here at the end of the day. So I think that we probably have four of the most passive officers we have acting as SROs for the Ritenour School District. Elliot's the nicest person I know. Out of all of this, Elliot is the nicest person, and he leads the way for our SROs. And I truly believe that we need to change the verbiage. Once an administrator says, I need your help, or our SROs determine that our kids are at risk, our staff is at risk, there's horrible things going on, that we let the K-9 policy take over.
Can I just ask a question? If we're a little bit unclear what forward restraint, what is the definition? We don't do it. And then when you pull that forward, we don't do it.
Yeah. So the language of forward restraint that was brought to us is taken a student to the floor.
Yeah. We were discussing this at dinner last night. I had dinner with the kids, and I said, you know, they don't want us to do prone. How are you going to put handcuffs on a kid if he's fighting you, if he's resisting you? And Elliot just showed you how he would do it. And the kid's going to be on the ground, or the perpetrator's going to be on the ground for just a short time, because as soon as they get those handcuffs on, they want them up and out and talking to them. But now we can do it when they're not at risk and nobody else is at risk. So to say it's a prone position, it's a short-term prone position, right? Yeah, I think that Matt reminded me of a situation with Dr. Kilbright a couple years ago. And he said, you know, there's just times when you have to take the kid down. When he's hurting other people, you don't have a choice. And I think anybody who's been in a building and seen a kid with so much energy because of anger or whatever, you have to realize that these are gentle giants that have to protect the man.
Thank you, Elliot. Thank you, Mary Kay. Thank you. So board members, the purpose of, thanks to the St. Anne Police Department, the purpose tonight was just to be clear around what this could look like. Appreciate now what it can look like. Appreciate you for sharing that. Just wanted to open it up for any discussion as to what you've seen tonight, any thoughts you might have around what you've seen in terms of the items in the document.
Well, I hope it was a good presentation. I hope that everybody learned something. I really didn't hear much at all, and I didn't see the presentation. So, you know, this is something we're going to have to work on.
Yeah, I'd just like to know the last presenter there, was she for or against the SROs? I couldn't even tell that.
Yeah, so Penny, that was Mary Kay Nolan, and so
Okay, all right.
Tonight it's not been for or against. It's just been specifically that topic of restraint is what we've been talking on.
Okay, all right. I thought that she was talking on whether she thought it was a good idea or a bad idea. I couldn't even tell that much, but okay.
If this is something we're going to vote on next week, I think I need to understand what they were saying, because I didn't see a demonstration, and until you said thank you to Mary Kay, I didn't know that was her. I didn't hear her name before. Either. I didn't hear it presented. I didn't hear her anything like that. I didn't see whatever demonstration you had. I have full faith in the St. Anne Police Department, but as far as the presentation, I didn't see what was going on. It's very hard to hear. You guys sound like you're in a big echo chamber. If you're not real close to a microphone, it echoes like you're in a barrel.
Okay.
So the question is, Dr. Tyler, Mr. Arden, would you like him to read?
I can't really hear what's going on.
We can turn the computer around.
Do what? I can't understand what she said.
We could set up a separate time for me. That would be an option. So, all right, thank you.
So I do have a question. How many times have we been?
So my understanding, the conversation I had this last week, there have been two times in this last year where that had to happen. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't hear that question. Who asked that? What was the question?
I'm sorry. My question was, has that happened? Where they
So what we keep data on is we keep data on arrests that happen at Ritenour High School. We don't have any information. I wasn't able to share clear data on the number of times that restraints were used. The data that I did share was last year at Ritenour High School, there were 29 arrests at the building based on the data window that I had. But in terms of the number of restraints, all restraints, I don't have that data. I don't know that specific answer.
So what does de-escalation look like across the high school, that partnership with the SROs and the staff?
And it's literally being at the listener and asking someone, what's wrong? quite a bit, and then we can have programs, you know, and it's being good for us and trying to avoid going against them. You know, what's going on? That would be a huge part of the escalation.
Other questions, board members?
Yeah, what'd they just say?
Okay.
What was being said?
No.
So Brad, I just asked, what does the escalation look like? And they said, Officer Elliott said that they use verbal judo, which consists of empathy and talking through the situation, kind of asking them what's wrong. Can you hear me? I'm saying all this. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you pretty good, Lisa. Thank you.
Okay. I am.
For some reason, I can't hear Jennifer at all. Is she near a microphone?
I'm not there in the microphone, my device was not connected to the Wi-Fi here, so I have let you hear me. So I just told her,
I don't-
can you hear me now?
I can't hear Jennifer.
Okay.
Any other questions, board members? So based on the way this meeting has gone, I think there needs to be more conversation about that. You know, the goal was to have this come to you next week for your approval, but there's been concerns raised by board members. What I'd like to be able to do would be able to share a presentation next week if it suits the board. And maybe we could have everybody together in a different format to get the full presentation. Any other questions?
Is there any way that we could maybe send out a survey, get community input from students about this, and just like should we or shouldn't we it if we do have SRO, what can we do to make them feel more comfortable?
So your question, Kayla, is what can students do to make the SROs feel more comfortable? Is that what your question was?
No, I was saying okay, so basically I've had great experience with SROs. They have been kind to me, but it's not my experiences that we don't have a very diverse board, so I feel like what we should be doing is surveying families in the community that are most affected by this issue, especially students, because they're the ones who come here every day and they're the ones who likely have anxiety around this issue. So if it's a survey or if we reach out to students specifically to ask, hey, if anyone has any comments about this, I just don't that most of us have the experiences to be able to make this call to say this is what we need.
Okay. So you're advocating for surveying students, is that what you're saying, Kayla?
Wait, sorry?
Are you advocating for surveying students on the topic of SROs? Is that what you're saying?
Black students, Black families. We don't, just because we don't have a lot of representation on the board, I don't know if we can really make the call.
Okay. Thank you.
There's no other thoughts, board members. I'd like to work with you to set up a follow-up presentation next Thursday, either with members of the command staff or others. Thank you all. Thanks for being here. Thank you.
Can you guys hear me now? Hello?
Oh, yeah. You're in Chris Kilbride's seat.
What did they say? Okay. So we're going to move on to 2.04. We have our professional development plan for virtual instruction, and Dr. Stewart will be presenting on that.
Is that the right one?
Okay, good evening. First, I think we want to introduce, well, you may know Ms. McCoy, our lead teacher for Virtual Academy. And Bob Dillon.
Bob Dillon, who is our consultant, that's helping us with setting up Virtual Academy and giving us some great information about what it should look like.
So everybody, you're gonna have to speak like closely into the device.
So she's just gonna do the introduction and we're gonna move on.
Okay. Okay, good evening. So we want to continue our vision to develop leaders that are recognized for academic excellence and produce graduates who lead lives of personal integrity and fulfillment. And our mission, which is to continue to ensure learning occurs in a supportive environment for our students, and they're able to think critically, solve problems, and develop knowledge and skills necessary for success in our diverse global society. Just wanted to give you an overview of the professional development that has been put in place for our Virtual Academy teachers. Next week on the 10th is an introduction to Virtual Academy. Teachers will learn more about what Virtual Academy is, the expectations, how to build positive climate and culture in their classroom, and strong relationships, and then the importance of collaboration and maximizing self-directed and asynchronous learning for students, and then to continue to empower students to develop their voice in the classroom, and they will learn more about Google Classroom as well. So Ms. McCoy is going to further the conversation in detail about what that's going to look like during next week. Sorry.
So, and on August 10th, what we're doing is looking at what virtual learning should look like. Just going over what the role of the educator is, that she should be more of a facilitator versus direct instruction, and looking at what a blended learning environment looks like. How to build the culture of your virtual learning environment, especially when it's online, like just looking at how you want to engage those students and what your expectations are for the asynchronous learning piece, and knowing that you need to build those expectations, and then looking at the schedule also and just becoming acquainted with what the office hours should be, what those office hours will look like. And we are starting off with looking at what the competencies are, which is something we discussed at the last meeting of the day one would go over what the facilitator does and how the designer will go in and design the actual lessons. And then on August 11th, when we talk about building classroom community and student engagement, just going over how to establish those norms. We do that just regularly in a classroom, but when you're online, those norms look a little bit different. And knowing that students need expectations, and so do the teachers and the families all together, they have to come to an agreement of what that looks like. And that can be something just as a weekly agenda, a daily agenda, and going over what are we going to do for the day? What are we doing for this week? Because it is asynchronous and synchronous learning, students having that information ahead of time and families having that information ahead of time is very vital so that they know what to expect for that week and also know what's expected of them as far as their actions while online. And then looking at how to build collaboration amongst our students within that environment. It's so easy to do that in the classroom, but just knowing, letting teachers know what they can do as strategies to use to engage them and put them in collaborative groups online. And that's looking at your ISTE competencies of citizenship and being collaborators. And then for August 12th and 13th, those are the longest times, which because they cover what self-directed learning looks like and what asynchronous pieces look like, and you're going through just making them more into innovators and getting that design thinking process going, looking at what real world applications they can apply within their lessons so that students, when they become self-directed learners, that's more of what they're doing. That real world application, they're going out on websites, they're doing the research, they're learning how to apply this information that they've learned into real life things. So that's one of the pieces we'll go over, and then what alternative assessments will look like. We're not sitting in a classroom where you can do paper, pencil, and get that answer. So what does that look like as far as what the students are producing and turning in? It does not always have to be a Google form or a multiple choice quiz. It can be something much more. And then student data, if we want them to be self-directed, they have to also take ownership of their learning. Reviewing their data, what does that look like when students are responsible for what they're learning, how they look at their data, and how they're reflecting on where they need growth. It shouldn't just be the teacher, but also making them more responsible, which means they care more about it and they're willing to put forth the effort. And teachers need to know how to get students there. And that goes into, again, the collaborator piece and the facilitator piece.
So let me just note, we had a chance to meet with all of these online, and we had great conversations. Hey, I get to work with a lot of teachers around the country. You had teachers that had done some amazing things in the spring, were super enthusiastic about this model, and they were very eager to be a part of this work. And so that puts you way out in front of a lot of other school districts that are just really kind of thinking about this model going forward. So you should be proud of the work that's been done here.
And then on the last day,
what was that was being asked?
We talked about student voice. So I know that a big piece is that engagement piece. And what we found when you find a lot of students not willing to speak up a lot. So just knowing that there are platforms that will engage them more and get them to speak up and use their voices, especially for those issues that they are very passionate about. And just having those platforms that you can use so that they feel more comfortable speaking out and they can also share it out. So things like Flipgrid, I know I've introduced before, and then Padlet, but also using Google Classroom for the teachers. Yes, a lot of our teachers are knowledgeable of Google Classroom, but exactly how to use it within a virtual format of sending things out to parents, making sure they're updated weekly on the progress, and having that communication piece with students. That's a little bit extra. And then Seesaw would be another one for the K-1 students because it is a lot simpler for them to use. And then going over what the potential issues are, if it's a technical issue or student-centered issue, who do you contact for that right away to get it handled so that it's not festering and we're losing that instructional time. And then we'll close out with just what the structure should look like for your POC time, going over that student data, going over how can we always look at improving what we're doing. And those surveys that we talked about before of just surveying to make sure that our virtual community is working for our families and working for our classroom students. And then looking at the overall structure of how it's going. So after next week, we start with our overall district PD, but this PD for the virtual academy is ongoing. As we navigate throughout the year, we want to make sure that they're getting the best PD so that they can offer the best instruction for our students. Of course, this is new for us in the Ritenour School District, but we want to make sure that they're equipped to provide whatever is needed for our students in their learning. Just participating in a monthly PD. I know we discussed having the last Friday of the month being a monthly PD for those teachers to participate in and get more information. And then using that POC time to, like I said, go over the data and learn about new things that they can use to explore with their students. And completing the Otis playlist. So I know Evelyn may speak to that today, I'm not sure, but she has introduced us to the Otis platform where she's been building playlists and they've been very helpful. So using that also as a way for our teachers to get more engaged with the virtual aspect. And that is it. Any questions? That's the International Standards of Technology in Education.
So can you talk about what this certification is?
So going through the ISTE certification process, I'm sorry, my address is sticking to the seat. But going through the process, what you learn are these 7 competencies about how to build technology within instruction, how to implement technology. And it's more than just giving a student a device or using an application. You go into how that looks as far as instruction. Your devices should be last in thinking about, but you want to make the most powerful piece of instructional thinking and getting them to learn on their own, making them more responsible for their learning, and how you can build that. And then that digital citizenship to make sure not only are they learning online, but they're also being responsible. And then it gives the pieces of standards for teachers and it's also standards for students. And you want to make sure that you're meeting both within your instruction.
So you've already certified?
I'm sorry?
Already certified?
Yes.
Okay, and then you may have a whole bunch of questions. I don't know what any of this is. What Flipgrid, Padlet, Seesaw, and
Okay, so in December, I remember when I presented with my students, they introduced you all to Flipgrid, and that was the video where they were recording, and they showed you students talking. So what you do on Flipgrid as a teacher, I may pose a question to them, I may give an assignment. Instead of them having to write about this assignment, they may record a video. They may have, and they can use that to discuss with each other, provide feedback to each other, and I can also use that just to hear their thinking and understand them more, because not everyone is well with putting it on paper, or it may be a quick assignment where they don't need to really put it on paper. With that, hearing that discussion piece and making sure that you hear their voice.
Padlet?
Same. So Padlet is more of a collaborative space online. They can record a video, they can write, but it's still an assignment from myself, and it may be a question of a piece of reading that we just read. They can type up what they thought about that piece of reading, or they can record a video. They can take a screenshot and do a drawing, an illustration, that type of thing. But it's all together, so that's a space where they can have dialogue with each other.
Okay, Seesaw?
Seesaw is like Google Classroom. It's where the teacher has to put the assignments out to students. That's our platform that we're going to use so that teachers can communicate with students, putting out the assignments, and that's where the parents can go and know what we're doing.
And Otis playlist?
So the Otis platform is a professional development platform for technology pieces. So let's say I am a teacher that is not abreast on Google Classroom. I can go on there and it can teach me exactly how to use it. It may not go fully in depth, but it just depends on what you're looking for. And it has so many options there for you to learn more about.
Great, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
What does it look like as far as subject matter experts? I know we have our PLC teams. Is each team going to have a subject matter expert that will be able to help the colleagues, or is it just going to be the teachers that are assigned to the virtual academy?
So for the middle school, we have our specific subjects that are laid out. For the middle school, they have their subject matters that are laid out. And of course, that's who they will be meeting with their team. So the math experts, the ELA people that's there. As far as elementary, it'll run the same as being in the building. You have your grade level teachers that are teaching everything, and you focus on your specific subject matter that week that you within your PLC team.
So I guess that's subject matter
Okay, so then that would be me. That would be it. Right. We're making ourselves available. I'm sorry, I didn't get that piece, but we're making ourselves available that we are going to the PLC meetings, making ourselves available that they can reach out with any questions, and we are making sure that we're checking in to see that it's going okay.
For the
virtual academy.
But then I'm talking about like for the first part of the school year, everybody. I think that's just, well,
So there's professional development.
Yeah, I can't hear a thing that's being said right now.
Let me stand behind, not too close, but
Yeah,
we presented to
I didn't hear
the
it. I didn't hear a thing that said there was a lot of silence right
At
there.
one of the schools that created a whole video of how she applies the 5 E's to instruction, which, you know, we're engaging students and we're using Padlet to do that. So we have discussion boards with students and how to engage them at higher levels and how to embed videos and do all that. We have teacher leaders across the district that has great technology, levels of technology in our district. So we are seeing that. And through our interview process, we saw many teachers that had that leadership and ability to teach others about technology and how to embed that instruction. So that's what we're doing.
Then our plan is to use those educators that were selected for the virtual academy as we go through these PDs to build up more of their knowledge platform. Then they can also be those leaders within the district to help and assist with this. So next week they have the PD using those pieces as the foundational pieces to start, because this some of this may not go into the next PD, you know, with the time frame that we have. And this is of course optional for them to go to, but many have signed up for it. So for them to use this and to continue to help out with that. Mm-hmm. I keep looking at the speaker, I'm waiting.
Okay, so does anybody else have any other questions? Brad and Penny, does this help a little?
Now that when you talked, I could hear you, but when there was a question, I don't know who asked the question, but I only heard the answer. So it didn't really help me understand what was going on.
I heard the presenters really well.
Right.
But when somebody else would speak, it was hard to tell what they were saying. Except for Lisa, I could hear her.
Lisa was the one that actually asked the question. So I've dialed in from my phone, so that way you guys can hear me better. And, you know,
I can hear you real well. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, do you guys have any other questions?
I actually have a question.
Okay.
So you guys gave us a presentation on what you're going to do for the teachers at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're going to give us a presentation as to how you're going to roll this out to the parents. I mean, how, you know, a lot of parents are not tech savvy.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we going about making sure that that information is given out, and what is that going to look like?
So the question on the table was, how would we make sure that we are rolling this out to the parents, or how do we plan to roll it out to the parents? As far as the virtual academy piece, it was rolled out in the, what is it called? Pretty much the family contract of what they would agree to. That was the first step. And from there, we know that parents had difficulty last time with even getting online and knowing the spaces to go to. So the idea was to actually record video tutorials for parents to send out to the community so they know where to access it, how students would get logged in, but not only for parents, also do that for students, because we have a lot of younger students that may not have used Chromebooks within their space over the course of the year. So a lot of second graders did not have them.
And I was just thinking, there will be a lot of conversation. We understand. Okay, what are we going to do?
Mhm.
That's still
I can't hear anything Orlando's saying.
And helping parents log on and actually having translators there for parents as well. We've talked about having an evening to help our parents.
okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Communicate with SSDs and school districts for our parents that have to contend with making sure that modification of the learning materials for the virtual learning is available for them and also for the parents.
So yes, we have communicated with SSD and they know that the virtual learning pieces are being offered. They'll get more of it once the August 17th date hits to start engaging with teachers more.
And we also have been in meetings with our SSD administrators, and they have a list of students. They already know who they are. So yes, we're definitely working together to make sure that all
So board members, looking forward to giving you updates on professional development as we move throughout the year. We're taking the Reversal Academy plan and essentially expanding it to every teacher, just so that we've got everybody trained up around tech integration. Because there's no telling how long we're going to stay in phase 3, and we just want to make sure people are successful. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Okay.
So Penny and, I'm sorry, Mr. Garden and Dr. Thomas, we're moving on to 2.05 with the alternative methods of instruction with Dr. Stewart again. Did that come across?
Okay, hello again. So I'm here to talk about the alternative methods of instruction. Again, we want to make sure they're working in partnership with parents and community to develop leaders and recognize for academic excellence and produce graduates that will become productive citizens and live lives of personal integrity and fulfillment. We will continue to work together to ensure that students think critically, solve problems, and develop the knowledge and skills necessary for success in our diverse global society. So what is AMI? Alternative Methods of Instruction. That is a learning plan for students for short-term school closures. Initially, that was 36 calendar hours per year. And it's really, the purpose was if you had a gas leak or there was severe weather, contagious disease, and it has to be approved by the state. Our AMI was submitted last year and it was approved by the state, but now we have an AMI-X plan. So it's an extension of the AMI plan. And the plan, the state says you have to provide engagement for all students, explain how instruction and feedback is going to be delivered to our families and our students, and have a plan for ongoing delivery of instruction during the closure with feedback and communication. We know that communication is very important for our students and our families. So the AMI-X plan, it addresses variations by grade level and content, supports students with individual education plans, and the state will continue to fund the schools, and their attendance will be calculated based on that plan. So intermittent blended instructional plan is basically if buildings or districts are closed for a period of time due to COVID, so you have to put in place distance instruction for students during that closure, lesson plans, modules for students, and you have to have a plan for communicating with families. So the actual on-site rate is applied to all of the days at the end of the year. So I'm going to explain that a little bit more. So if you have a calendar year with 1,100 calendar hours, your district may be closed for 300 hours. So there's only 800 possible on-site hours per student. And let's say the student attends about 750 hours. Then they calculate that attendance at 93.75%. And then they'll apply that to the entire year. So you won't get the whole 300 hours, you'll get 93.75% of that 300. And then they'll add the 750 of the actual hours the student attended. And that's how you'll get your ADA. So that's an example of how it will work.
So what AMI does, board members, essentially that allows us to never have another inclement weather day again. We can shift to cyber snow days. We can shift to virtual days. This AMIX plan, this allows us to function in a hybrid environment as well. So when you operate in a hybrid environment, you've got students that are going to be learning in person for a portion of the week. They're going to be learning virtually for the other portion of the week. So the AMIX plan allows us to calculate attendance when we're in a hybrid model where students are coming for a portion in person of the week. So that's why we have to have a plan filed with the state. Whenever we get to phase 2, where there is a hybrid option where kids are learning in school, we just have to have a plan in place so that we're online for DESE to get the attendance calculated and to get funding based on that. When you're in a fully virtual environment, like we're going to start the year, you get counted at the end of the year for 94% attendance. In the district, we're going to be taking attendance on a daily basis in our SIS system to track engagement and to track that students are logging on and are a part of the synchronous instruction. That's really for safety purposes. That's also for wellness team purposes to see which students are not logging on a daily basis each of the periods throughout the day. Because it's not for funding, because when you're fully virtual, students are all counted for 94%. But when you move to hybrid, this highlights the importance of strong in-person attendance, because if we have 2 days in person a week, which is our phase 2 model, and students would miss one of those 2 days for that week, students' attendance is 50%. So over the course of the year, there's a smaller sample of days, and so we know student attendance is important here, and it's been a struggle for us. We really need to push on it when we get to the hybrid model. The struggle that we're going to encounter is when a student is sick, they're sick. And we've eliminated our incentive programs, and as part of our return to learning plan, a lot of the sanction programs are removed too. So it's a balance that we need to strike, because when we get to phase 2, the days that students are supposed to be in person, they very much need to be with us for ADA purposes. But the good and right thing for students is not to be focusing on perfect attendance, to be focusing on sanctions. We strip those away, from my perspective.
So we have any questions?
So if we're going to be taking attendance, will we be sending out messaging to families ahead of time so they realize that that's the expectation? And I ask that because I know of a lot of high schoolers who are thinking it's going to be like it was in March. And so they're getting jobs, they're not understanding that there'll be an attendance expectation.
As far as we've gotten at this point, Lisa, this is in the return to learning plan. The messaging to students ahead of time, especially at the high school, we don't have that together yet. The hold harmless provision is something that we're going to have to message, but we'll be holding schools accountable to figure out what that messaging is going to look like. But we don't have any models that we've pushed to the buildings yet to push out to kids. There will be an expectation there are back to school, virtual, return to school days. That's something that we'll have to make sure it gets covered in those conversations.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stewart. All right, so moving on to 2.06, we have our equity plan discussion. Dr. Kilbright?
Thank you, Ms. Gomez. So board members, Evelyn Gilliam is here with us tonight, and Evelyn is going to assist us with this portion of the conversation. So board members, we've met 4 times, 3 times over the course of the month of July, leading up to the point where we'd be discussing a equity statement. And when we were together last, on the 30th, we talked about 3 specific questions that would guide this conversation tonight. And those specific questions, I believe that we're going to pull those up. I think we're going to pull those up here on the screen. You've got the draft of the equity statement, and we'll turn it over to you.
So Doug, if you check your email, I sent this just in case because I wasn't sure where we were with this. So the document is called Board Equity Statement, and it's the last slide in there. Okay. I can share it right now. I have it right here. I'm sorry. Yep, I'll just share it with you.
So board members, while waiting,
okay,
I want to say thank you to Michelle. I want to say thank you to Doug Gray and Mike Smith for the first attempt at this meeting tonight. So there's been actually a lot of work going on in trying to pull this off tonight. We've identified a couple of glitches. It's certainly for people that are zooming in, it's not meeting their needs, but just know that's despite the efforts of a lot of people. So Mike Smith, thank you. Doug Gray, thank you. Michelle, thank you for working to get tonight organized. Board members, moving forward, I think we should talk about this more. I don't know that we're able to accomplish in person in Zoom at the same time, but that'd be your decision.
So I can read the questions while we're getting set up. And those questions that we started with related to our board equity statement are, in terms of investigation, what will require more learning? With information, what clarifications do you need? And with affirmation, what are some things in the equity statement that you agree with? And so my role tonight is just to be here to help provide that clarification. Yeah, you can put that one up. There's a presentation also, but this will do. Are there questions? I'm sure there are some questions. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much for all the hard work that everybody did to really create this document. Reading it through, there was a group that wasn't in there, and that was our children with special needs.
Okay.
If that is a possibility, if we can have that added in. I'm sure it was not intentional, but I just think that is also very important.
Okay.
So do you have some lines?
Not necessarily. It was a group that I just saw that was kind of neglected from the list that should be included.
So I have a list here where it says treat everyone, parents, students, staff, families, and guests. Do you want me to line out students with special needs in that part? Okay.
So what do you think about that, Stacey? Does that meet your needs, or is that something?
Yeah. Once you put it in there, I'll reread it again.
Okay. Other questions, things that we need to clarify? And just so you all know, Lisa Greenstein is on the Zoom as well. She was part of the group that wrote the statement.
One of the things I'd like to affirm, I don't know if you're getting feedback or what, but the section under the second section, students will see themselves, their culture represented throughout the building and districts. Teachers will embed cultural competency and cultural responsiveness and trauma-informed practices into their teaching and interactions with students. So I appreciate that in there. The one question I had was about the prioritization. It is,
We will prioritize our interactions with every parent, student, guest, and colleague.
Yeah, can you give me a little bit more about the what you mean by prioritization?
Okay, so one thing that came up when we were having this conversation about what we wanted to include in the equity statement was that there are times when someone may enter a building and an office professional or someone that they are coming to meet with might be in the middle of working on something. And if what they're working on at that moment is not of the utmost urgency, that there should be a greeting, a welcome, and acknowledgement that you're present in the space. And so what we were saying there is that we want to prioritize our interactions with people so that when people come into our spaces, we acknowledge them, we recognize them as soon as we can. So there are times, of course, where if you're working on something that you have to finish a thought, finish an idea, we recognize that, but also that parents are just standing around waiting for someone to say something to them to help them to meet their needs. And do we need to put the example in there, or clean up the language some to help explain that?
Oh, welcoming space. I mean, I get it when you give that visual. For whatever reason, I can't find this section is out of front of me.
Okay, it's right under the definition.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I didn't necessarily have any specific language, just want a clarification around it. The other piece for me in the second section, the section below that I feel like may be missing as an educational institution, I don't see where we really talk about educating all stakeholders on anti-bias and anti-racist practices.
Okay. So we can add a line right under the encourage the Ritenour community to speak up, ask questions, learn more, build bridges. Yeah. Do you want it to be its separate bullet, or do you want it to be like a bullet underneath there to explain it?
Either one is fine. I just think that if we're talking about encouraging people to speak up about it, then I think there's opportunity for us to also educate the stakeholders.
Okay. Any other language that needs to be clarified?
I just have a question about a how on a particular sentence.
Okay.
Okay. The sentence that says students will see themselves, their culture represented throughout the building and district. I just wanted to know how that was going to happen. What were we going to do to show this?
Okay. So one example I can speak to right now is I know with the 9th and 10th grade ELA classes, they are building in more multicultural titles that students will be reading. So that will provide that window and mirror. So what we mean by window and mirror is that a window is an opportunity for students to learn about another culture, another information outside of their normal realm or their realm of experience. And a mirror is when their experience is reflected back in what they're learning. So through those multicultural titles, students will be able to see and learn about both their own culture and other cultures. So that's a way that students will see themselves represented throughout the building, throughout the district. Of course, with our culturally responsive teaching and learning that we do with students on a regular basis, the work we do with our teachers is on a regular basis. There's a whole section in there about ensuring that students are seeing themselves represented. Some of the things we also talk about with new teachers is something as simple as putting pictures of your children up in the classroom so that they can see themselves in the educational space. So those are some small ways we can do it. Some of the larger ways are when we really start getting into how students are taught and using examples from their life spaces that represent them in the classroom. Now that's part of, so this equity statement, as we've said before, is like the framework. It's the outer edge of the puzzle. Some of those details of how are the inner workings that happen after a board equity statement is adopted so that we have the language to be able to move forward in those areas. Does that clarify it?
I think so.
Any other questions or thoughts or clarifications, things that can be affirmed?
The other question I would have is how easy will it be to make changes in this statement as we, as we try to, to follow this and maybe find that there's things that, that we need to add or possibly take away. I'm thinking more adding, but, how easy is it going to be to accomplish, editing or, updating?
So I can speak on that. So at the bottom of the statement, the request or the ask of the board would be that the equity statement is readopted on a yearly basis. And so we would annually review, reflect on, and recommit to an equity statement policies to reflect our equity in our schools, families, and purpose to serve. So if there is a need to modify the document, it could be done on a yearly basis, and it could be done each year before the board. So Ruth's question was that could it be done sooner than a year? So the equity statement, much like the mission and the vision, it's the board's document. So if the board did decide to do it more than annually, that's something.
So we're committed to at least.
Yeah, minimum once a year.
Are there any other questions?
Does anybody have anything else they have, would like to address or look over the clarifications that you might need?
Are we supposed to approve this tonight?
So the approval process will be next week.
Okay.
Tonight is just for questioning and getting clarification about the language. And if we need to adjust any language or change the way anything is phrased, we can do that tonight. Thank you.
I did have one other question, well, not question, but a recommendation as far as in that last bullet about up underneath the clearly state the value of the equitable schools. If we could add some language about equity and inclusive practices. I mean, we talk about equity, we talk about reflecting on our commitment to equity, but I just think we could have stronger language surrounding inclusive practices and actions.
Okay. Do you want that as a separate bullet or just listed in there right this minute? I'm just adding it to there.
No, it could just be implemented, like equity and inclusion, inclusive practices.
Okay. So I have, we will annually review, reflect on, and commit to an equity statement, inclusive practices and policies that reflect our commitment to equity in our schools and the families we represent and serve.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is someone saying something?
Okay, I'm gonna write a note for that because that will be, as you said, more of the how than the statement, which is the more of the what or the why. Yes. So Ruth suggested that when we get to the point where we start implementing some practices that support our equity statement, our equity values, that in the front of each building, each school building, we have flags that represent the countries that our students are from.
Good idea.
All right, is that it? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Okay, so would it be helpful underneath there to add bullets that clarify what cultural competency, cultural responsiveness, and trauma-informed practices are? Or do you want me to do like a little bit of definitions at the end to explain those? Okay, I'm gonna put a note on the side to add bullets to clarify those three. So the question in case the question wasn't heard, the question was asked about the statement that says teachers will embed cultural competency, cultural responsiveness, and trauma-informed practices into their teaching and interactions with students. And Orlando suggested that we add some language to clarify what each of those things are. So I'm going to add bullet points underneath that particular spot to clarify that language.
Penny, Mr. Garden or Dr. Thomas, do you have anything else?
I couldn't really hear half the questions that were being asked. I could hear the presenter, but I couldn't hear the questions.
So Ms. Gill,
I'm watching the chat, and so they're putting them on the chat.
and she repeated them to try to help,
Right.
so that you heard what she was responding to. But yes, they have put them in the chat too. Do you have any other clarifying questions or any other suggestions?
No, I do not.
Okay. Ms. Gilliam, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes. So moving on to our, am I still on? Okay. Moving on to our next piece, we have our agenda review.
So board members, we're at 3.01, so agenda review. Thank you, Jennifer. So we've got a couple of changes now based on the struggles that we've had in the meeting tonight. So we'll go through our standard reports. Brian Sanker will provide a transportation update. He does that at the beginning. The St. Anne SRO agreement, based on the struggles tonight, we won't be coming for your approval, but rather we'll ask Officer Miller and some members of the command staff if they wish to come to give another report next week for the members that were able to be here tonight. That suits the board. When I talked with the city of St. Anne, up until today, it's going to be 3 members that were going to be here with us tonight, and we found out at about 2 o'clock that they were going to be sending 10 people. So we have a great delegation from St. Anne tonight. We'll see if we can have Officer Miller and perhaps Chief Jimenez and perhaps Major Barry as well to give an update on the report so everybody can hear.
I mean, really, it was just this demonstration. I could do the demonstration.
So it's up to the board. It's whichever way the board would wish that to go. You know, if the board, feels, so there was a thing that we need to have a conversation about, because the recommendation was in the draft agreement to remove prone restraint. That's what the conversation was about tonight. The request from the city of St. Anne is to remove that language around prone restraint, which definition is to put a person down on the ground. So I don't know if that's something that the board wants to have a conversation about next week, or where you all are on that.
I'd like to see it so that I can have an idea of whether I like it or not.
So what I'll do this week then is I'll share 2 versions of the agreement, one with the language with it being outlawed, and one with that language removed, and then we'll have them come to.
Maybe I need to review the policy, because I don't know what their policies are, the language that they're suggesting.
Okay, sorry for me. So for those on Zoom, I was just saying with the SRO agreement, for me, I need to review the policy. They provided us with the St. Anne Police District policy about what they deem as imminent danger and situations that will escalate, and I don't, so for me, I need to review this. Let me just say that.
Guess who was gonna get it to us?
Say that again.
They got that to us this week.
Well, they gave it to us tonight.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes.
And could we also get a copy of the language that was handed out that she would like to add in place of the prone restraint?
Yeah, we can scan this. We'll
Okay.
scan it and get it to you tomorrow.
Okay, great.
So were there documents handed out during that presentation?
It was handed out by the city of St. Anne.
By who?
By Mary Kay Nolan from the city of St. Anne.
Okay. So I would like a copy of that.
So I'll take those steps that I talked about and we can have the conversation next week. Board communication goals, so this goes back to the past September. If you remember, there was a communication goal specifically around secondary communication. Since that time, there's been a whole lot that's happened. We want to give an update on the data that we have from that communication goal. The expectation was that we would report out to you in June. But then there's been a whole lot that has happened. We do want to follow through and share with you the data around communication we do have. So Doug Gray next week will present to the board on the data that we do have around communication at the secondary level. And then there could be conversation about what it can look like moving forward. We've captured some of your feedback and changes tonight. So next week, the equity statement will be coming to you for your consideration and approval. And every year, the Missouri Ethics Commission, there's a conflict of interest policy that's required for readoption. On a yearly basis, that will be coming to you for your approval next week. All that will be in board docs. We'll have some personnel recommendations as a part of a personnel list in open session next week. And we do have some consent agenda items that will come to you on the consent agenda. And then just as the board decides around that St. Anne SRO agreement, we can present it to you as a recommendation at your leisure. If it's next week, if it's next week, if it's September, it's September. Just want to make sure that everybody fully understands what the board is agreeing to. So when the recommendation does come, we can get as close to a 7-0 as possible. So that will just be based on conversation over the course of this week as to when the recommendation will actually come.
So if you can get those documentation to us, and then everybody can review it. If you get time or have time, if we're ready for it, we're ready for it. If we're not, we'll table it.
Okay, so that is the agenda, board members, for next week. And I think this might be the appropriate time. So I just talked about thanking all the people that worked so hard today to get this kind of format together. Before we shift into our special meeting, because we do have some personnel items from last time for your approval, what's your feedback on this format? You know, the approach of trying to do in-person and Zoom at the same time, I think it's admirable. I don't know that it's working that well. What are your thoughts?
No, it's not working very well.
I think you're in the wrong room, and I don't think everybody is being cognizant of the microphone use.
It really was hard. Yeah. So, Penny and Brad, so Ruth's suggestion was the choir room for moving forward. I think you can never make things perfect, but the least likelihood to have obstacles is if it was either all in person or all virtual, like one or the other. Would you be interested in going to that approach, either all in person or all virtual, or do you want to attempt to do this split like we're doing now, maybe in the choir room?
This has been a very stressful meeting.
Yeah. So Stacy's asking a question about microphones. Everybody had a microphone. So, Doug Gray, I think, spent about three hours today just trying to get this all worked out. And we looked at a lot of options for the way that it's done. And Doug, I think you agree to do the dual system is complicated. Is that correct?
It is not everyone typing out in between people that are at home and here is the challenging part.
No, I finished.
So my suggestion actually is if the people that are here, I didn't think about it and I didn't know what to expect. So I would have brought my other computer that I've been using. And if I had a headset, then that would actually work. It would just be like Zooming, we're all together and they would be able to hear. So if we all had headsets on or some using our own microphones, I think that would be easier. So does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think the problem that we still will have is when you have a situation like the demonstration in here, where he was not privy to a microphone. So
what we should have done is somebody should have taken that computer and moved it around in the front and actually held it to where he was giving the demonstration.
The whole presentation from St. Anne, I missed completely. There was no picture, there was no sound. I didn't even know that was Mary Kay until someone said her name.
No, I didn't either.
You turned yours around at one point, didn't you?
Yeah.
But it's still too much movement to really capture the computer. If it was, if it was a way to have a camera or something, I don't know.
I just wondered too, knowing next week is a business meeting where the board is going to be voting to take action on things. If we have snags next week like we have today, that would be because there'll be votes.
But I mean, I could hear Chris most of the time, and I could hear Lisa almost all the time. But everybody else, it was off and on the whole meeting.
So a lot of that had to do with the fact that, like, that's why I was saying is if we have headsets and we have our microphone on our headset, that would help eliminate that. You would be able to hear us. It would just, I mean, it would be like if I was Zooming from home, I have my headset on and I have my microphone, but I'm doing it here with everybody. Unless, I guess the question is Kayla, Brad, and Penny, do you feel comfortable coming in?
Yes, I'll definitely be there next week.
I'm pretty sure. I just want to stay, right where I'm at. I just wish we could, hopefully we could fix all this.
So Penny, let me ask you this. Do you hear me fine? Can you hear me okay now?
Right now I do, but most of the meeting, I didn't hear you very well.
Yeah, and a lot of that has to do with the fact I don't have anything in front of me. I didn't have my phone hooked up. My computer wasn't working. So if I hook up my computer and I put a headset on, you're going to be able to hear me.
It's just when the presentations are, there was someone standing in front of you guys. I didn't hear a word. It was very on off. It was very much.
That's what would be required is we would need to make a purchase of a webcam to try to make this more doable.
That's going to be a challenge with the Zoom, that's my
sorry about that. The webcam and the Zoom together are what's the challenge, actually. That was the obstacle that I couldn't get over. I can do research this week to see what I can find out, but I wasn't really prepared to pull those two things together to be able to show the webcam. It requires a switcher and some other equipment that our department doesn't have right now. So, oh yeah, we could definitely set another computer right there. Or The issue. better yet, just ask the person that's presenting to actually go behind. And Yeah. explain to them, we actually need you to stand behind there so everybody can. I think the due diligence, the other issue that we may have a little bit is the masks. I know that some of the muffling problems that we had in the very front of the room was because of the mask making them like a little bit more of a muffled sound for those listening on the audio. And so I think that's another challenge that is for part of this as well. So I think that if we stay true to having everyone around the table with a device, with headphones, that you could communicate so that everybody outside could hear, and also our presenters stayed true to making sure that they stayed in front of the computer and they spoke clearly in front of that computer, I think that it would solve a lot of our issues that we had this evening.
Yeah, we could hear the presenter real well. The presenter was the best. Chris was terrible because of the echo, but then all of a sudden the echo would stop. Oh.
So what I'm trying to hear you is whoever is not speaking has to have their microphone on at all times, and whoever is speaking has to have their microphone on, even if the presenter computer picks up feedback from the person having some computer
Yeah, I don't know what Chris is saying right now. I can't hear him.
I can't hear anything. What's going on?
And so,
Dr. Colbert, I think you're actually muted.
So the board wanted to consider full virtual next week because of the votes and because there's like still some glitches we need to work out. Or do you want us to try to make this better and give it a go like this again next week?
I don't think exactly. I understand that they're having issues, but.
I understand that they were having issues, but I think the problem can be solved by using headsets and microphones in this room. I mean, to me, there's no difference than if we're sitting in our home or if we're sitting up here, but I just feel like we need to be here together.
Is that the best room? There's a lot of echoing in that room.
So let me ask you, am I, I'm going over this. So am I echoing right now?
No, not now.
Now that the presenter is muted, nobody's echoing.
Okay.
But then I don't hear anybody right now. Is anybody talking?
Nobody's talking right now.
Okay.
So what is I want to hear from everybody else. What is your suggestion?
The band room has, I don't know what they're called, but they are these like things on the wall that absorb sound. So maybe that would be a good spot to do it.
If tonight was a practice, as it were, it was our work session. We didn't vote on anything. It was where we got information. Next week, when we go to vote on the various things on the agenda, we have to be able to hear the discussion, and you have to be able to hear the vote. And if we can't do that, then what part then are we going to isolate one group from another? The people that are there in person obviously have an advantage because you're there. You don't have to rely on the electronics. But for those of us that aren't there, it puts us at a disadvantage if we're not able to hear everything and see everything. Tonight, I saw nothing of the presentation from the SRO officer, nor did I know what Mary Kay Nolan was saying to the board. The only reason I knew it was her was because Chris thanked her for being here. So that puts us at a disadvantage. So if we're going to do this same scenario next week, it has to work correctly, or you'd be alienating the people that decided not to come up there.
Yeah, because I would not want to vote tonight. If we'd had to vote on anything, I would have just abstained because I couldn't hear enough of what was going on to, to feel comfortable voting.
Yeah, I'm okay either way too.
Okay, I'm not gonna do it from home if we're doing it up here.
Okay, I'm not hearing much of that.
Yeah, I can't hear Ruth. I can tell it's her, but I can't hear what she's saying.
The only reason I came on tonight was because I couldn't hear it.
She's muted.
Okay, so let's just make a decision. We'll do it all Zoom because people don't feel comfortable. Is that what I'm hearing?
That'll be fine.
I mean, for me, if we're talking about, we're, not having technical difficulties, the greatest chance of not having technical difficulties would be to go Zoom. Because I think even when we have microphones, when we have headsets, you're still going to have issues. We're wearing a mask, so you got to adjust that. At home, we don't have on any masks, so that's why everything is kind of flowing, really smooth. So I just believe we're going to still have some kind of technical difficulties where those that are Zoom is not going to be privy to, what we're seeing and what we're hearing here, to vote on.
Okay, so next week's meeting will be through Zoom. All right, we good?
Good.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on. I'd like to call the meeting to order and declare that we have a quorum and look for the adoption of the agenda. I'll call the vote.
I didn't hear that. I didn't hear any of
So
that.
moved.
Did we have a motion?
I'm gonna do sign language. So Stacy made the motion and Lisa seconded for the agenda. I'll call the vote. Dr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Garden?
Yes.
Dr. Alvin?
Yes.
Ms. Greco? Ms. Glover Jones? And I'll vote yes. We've got the agenda. We'll move on to our personnel recommendations with Dr. LaChance.
Got it. Good evening, board members. I'm here for personnel recommendations 1 through 24, and I'm open to any questions you may have.
Can we put them up somewhere so we can see them?
Good evening, board members. I'm here to present personnel recommendations 1 through 24, and I'm open to any questions you may have.
Can we put those up so we can see them?
Add, if you turn on your chat, they've been typing them into chat, or Doug has been. Or they could be repeated, whatever is fine with me.
So Dr. Thomas, we cannot put those up on the screen.
Okay, and I do not have a hard copy.
It's the same one from last week.
Yes, we've made no changes to the list from last week.
Dr. Thomas, can you pull it up on your computer on your board docs?
I might lose all this, but yeah, I can do that. Working on it.
Sorry. Sorry. No, that's fine.
Dr. Thomas, I'll wait until you confirm you're okay with reviewing it.
So then we do not have any resignations or retirements or anything at this time for this report?
Not to present at this time. No.
That has to be a first. And this is the one where 5 through 22 are the virtual teachers?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You good?
Yes.
I'm
Okay.
ready.
Then I'll look for a motion.
Move we approve personnel agenda items 1 through 20. Was it 24? Was the last two? 24. As presented.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Does anybody else have any other questions? I'll call the vote. Dr. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Garden,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis, sorry.
Yes.
Dr. Alvin? Yes. Ms. Greco?
Yes.
Ms. Glover Jones?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Moving on to 1.05, we'll turn it over to Dwight Lindhorst and Dr. Kilbrain.
So board members, we have one last thing on the agenda. This would not normally come to you as a separate item, but rather we're bringing this item to you based on a conversation that the architects had with us.
Yes, good evening. Invoice for services from June, they were sent to us, but we did not get them on the July 9th warrant for your approval. I did not want to let this amount of check go out without your approval. And as with many small businesses, this is causing a cash flow concern for Mr. Kuba. So we agreed to bring this check to you for tonight for approval.
Was this from last year's budget?
Yes, it's in either operations budget or it's related to bond issue projects.
But it was for last year, not on this budget.
We're cash basis, Dr. Thomas, and so it's what we recognize expenditures when paid. As opposed to accrual basis when you would recognize them when they're incurred.
Okay, when were this? I guess the question is when did the services occur?
June.
In June.
But
okay.
But again, as most of our things, even utilities, we don't recognize those expenditures when they're incurred. We recognize them when they're paid. So generally, we're always a month behind, at least a month behind.
All righty.
So I had, hold on.
Ruth moved it. I need a second. Second. All right. Any other questions? I'll call the vote. Dr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Garden?
Yes.
Dr. Alvin?
Yes.
Ms. Greco?
Yes.
Ms. Glover Jones? And I will vote yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the last part.
Move we adjourn. Hope that's the last part.
Yep. I need a second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I'll call the vote. Dr. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Garden,
Yes.
Dr. Alvin,
Yes.
Ms. Greco,
Yes.
Ms. Glover Jones,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. We are adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you
All right.
guys.